Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I've run the Songwriters on Process website, where you can find more than 200 conversations with songwriters about the creative process. I'm not here to talk about tour stories, band drama, how a band got its name, or favorite foods. My goal is to treat songwriters as writers, plain and simple. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers. And today's interview is with Martin Courtney of Real Estate. I am a huge real estate fan, so this was a lot of fun for me to do this interview with Courtney, who talked to me from his house in upstate New York in Beacon. Seems like a lot of songwriters I've interviewed over the past couple of years are living in upstate New York. And Courtney has a new solo album out called Magic Sign on Domino Records. It is great. And this could be the first time that I've discussed children's literature with a songwriter. Now, we have 4 kids. Courtney has 3 kids. So between the two of us, we've read many, many, many children's books. And we talked about how there's a lot of really good children's books out there. And I don't mean the cliched children's book with the easy lesson, the moral lesson that you've read a million times. There is some good quality children's literature out there that's difficult to write. To write a book with fresh language, fresh lessons that adults can appreciate. And to that end, we shared our strong affinity for the book Strega Nona, which is one of my favorite kids' books, one of his too. And he even confessed that children's literature, some of the lines he's read in some of those books, has had an impact, has worked its way into some real estate lyrics. So if you hear some of those or read some of those, the liner notes, any real estate lyrics, you may find some children's literature references in there. He mentioned the word fun several times, about how much he enjoys the songwriting process, how fun it is. And he said, I'm going to quote him directly. He said, songwriting can be a painstaking process, which is why I'm trying to plow through it, take a step back, then chip away at it, rather than making it an agonizing process from the get-go. He just kind of gets everything out there, takes a step back, and then revises. And that seems like that's a new way for him to write. And he says that it's become, he's been having fulfilling results writing about the small details of everyday life. He's been really trying to work that into his songs. So it sounds like there's some new things he's been trying over the past few years in his process. And we talked about that too. So anyway, I enjoyed this. I'm a big real estate fan, as I said. So enjoy my interview with Martin Courtney of Real Estate. I always like to start by asking, are you an everyday type of writer or creative person in general? Do you feel that that's important to, as an artist, to create in some fashion every day, or just to kind of do it when you feel the urge?
It's something in between, because it used to be just whenever before I had kids, I guess, it was whenever I feel the urge, which ended up being, pretty often, because I had a lot of time on my hands to write. But now, I mean, I ideally I would be writing every day, but I don't really, I have to kind of set the time aside to do it. So it's different in that way, where I sit down and I'm like, it's songwriting time. But yeah, it's hopefully a few days a week, I'll carve out a few hours, usually at night, to work. But yeah, I guess the answer would be yeah, I do have to kind of make the time, and I found that over the last few years that I've done that, where I used to, now I have a studio here in my house, and for a while I had a studio in another building, in another town nearby, which was helpful. It's good to just have someplace to go. I used to think it's having a place outside of my house, that isn't, whatever the distractions of your house aren't around you. I mean, I can see that it is helpful, because I had that for a while, and then COVID, it just it made more sense to just move everything back to the house. But even that, it's just having an office, like a space to yourself to be like, this is my little songwriting lair, is useful for sure.
So that's interesting you say that, because I feel like this is I've never heard that from a songwriter, kind of that answer before, where you had a studio outside the home and now it's inside. And all I'm thinking of is all those people who have talked about if they're more productive, in an office environment, working from home versus being in the office. So, and I have a friend who, this is like 10 years ago, I think, full-time work from home. He was an attorney, and he would literally, to make him feel like he was going to work, he'd walk out his front door, then walk around to the back door and go into the office, because he felt like if he stayed in the house, it was, didn't have that same feeling. But what I'm hearing you say, that being that it's made you more productive, actually having that place close by rather than that feeling of going somewhere to do something.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. It's confusing now, because I've now been through so many different iterations of this. I do currently have a space that, like, we rent, where I'm basically paying some money into me and a couple other guys in my town. They started a studio, recording studio, that is in, like, basically the old high school in Beacon. They built a new high school, and the old building got bought by some private company, and they've basically converted the classrooms into spaces for they're mostly artist spaces, but there's also like small businesses in there and stuff like that. I think there's even like a church in one of the rooms. But yeah, so these guys built this recording studio in the basement, and I have access to it. And so we, like, when the band is around and we rehearse, we'll rehearse there. And, like, I could technically use it as a place to work, but, like, I've found, I mean, it's more just, it's about my own personal, like, situation where, like, I've got 3 kids, and, like, basically the time that I have to work is at night when they're sleeping.
Yeah.
And that's because my wife works full time as a nurse. So, like, I'm kind of, at this point, as of the last couple of years, I've just been like full-time dad. So, like, I'm on like hobby hours here. So, like, I can't really get out of my house to work because I gotta be around the kids. So it's been more useful to be able to, at least now, like for a while I had a space in my basement. My basement is unfinished and, like, extremely uncomfortable and not fun. Like, I tried to make it cool down there, but, like, eventually I was just like, I took over a room upstairs, so that at least, like, I feel like I'm in, my own whatever. It's good to be comfortable, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But, like, and actually, I don't know. I think it's weird. I think the answer is, like, I don't know if it matters, because I can be productive anywhere. Like, I've been really productive here. It's more about kind of my state of mind, I think. Like, sometimes I'll go months where I want to be writing, and I'll be like, I'll be holding a guitar every night and just trying to come up with some ideas, and for whatever reason, nothing sounds good to me. And then other times I'm just, like, in the zone, and I'll write, like, a bunch of songs, in a row. And I've been kind of more in that headspace recently, which is nice. But yeah.
Do you ever feel like, because I know as a writer too, I know that feeling is like to be, in that zone.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about, when you're in that zone, what's happening around you? Like, to me, it's important to know what's going on when I'm in that zone, so I can capture that later on, whether it's like time of day, place, things I'm eating, like anything. I guess to me, it's very important to know that, so that I can maybe replicate that for the future. So,
well,
I don't know.
It's a good idea.
Right. And it's a great idea in theory, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't say that I have had that much self-awareness about it, that I've actually done that. I don't know. I think to me, it's like having a goal in mind. Like, I basically, like, I spent it, I guess I work in terms of albums. And so if I am, like, I'll go into writing mode, and then I'll go into recording mode, and then, in the past it would be then you go into touring mode, and it's like it's hard for me to like hold multiple things in my head at once in terms of like what like aspect of being a musician I'm like focusing on at any given point. So like I spent most of 2020 writing, because it was like it just so Real Estate just put a record out. We couldn't tour or anything, and I just was like, I'm gonna write. I'll make another record right now, and so I wrote a bunch of songs that year. Decided to make a solo record, and then I spent most of 2021 recording those songs, and like, I was trying to write while like basically I didn't write a song for all of 2021, because I just was, and I didn't know why, like, because at a certain point, like you're done with the actual recording, and then it's like dealing with artwork and, things that don't really require like necessarily like musicianship, but it's still requiring my attention, to finish this thing. And, whatever, mastering, mixing, like basically dealing with this record now that just came out. Like as soon as the final, like, the final master was delivered, the artwork, everything is completely squared away, and it's like out of my hands. Everything's delivered to the label, and all I have to do now is wait for them to manufacture it and release it. Like that happened in December, and then in January I wrote like 5 songs. Like I just like, which is like I had all these little ideas that I had kind of filed away. Like I'd be recording things here and there, like I'm playing the guitar, and I'm like, oh, that's might be something, but I don't have the bandwidth to finish it. So I'm going to make a little voice memo on my phone. And then I just have been like going through all these voice memos and also writing new stuff. And now, I've basically written a record in the last 6 months. Like, Real Estate's hopefully going to be in the studio later this year.
Oh, cool.
With, all these songs I wrote this year. It's just like, but it's just like the damn, or whatever it was, that the blockage was like released, and all of a sudden I was able to write a ton. So yeah, it's just like, because I decided now I'm in writing mode. And
right.
And so it's because it's exciting to be in each different phase, and writing is really fun, and it's fun to like be, to kind of try and decide what direction am I going to go in with this batch of songs or whatever, and set like parameters for that. And then when you get into recording, it's like recording is extremely fun. I love recording. And so yeah, it's like that's where all of my focus goes, is to arrangements and things like that.
Yeah. So you mentioned voice memos. I'm actually fascinated by this because songwriters tell me you guys have hundreds of voice memos on your phone. Are they organized at all? Because all I'm imagining, and I love the answers I get. Like some just told me they're organized by title, but I've had some people tell me they're organized by emotion. Some people don't organize at all, and they have to go through or spend hours going, where is that thing? So is there any kind of filing system? Here we go. Let's see.
No, there's not at all.
There's not at all.
Well, actually, some of them have names, but they're mostly just like recording 180, whatever. Like it's just.
But isn't that maddening? Like if you go, how are you going to find that one where you go?
No, it's because now like I also use the voice memo app as like I'll bounce demos from my computer and like airdrop them to my phone and open them in the voice memo app. Like, so I use that as like my storage for actually like demos that I've recorded. So those at least have names, and no, it's just all I'm not organized like that. I mean, it's basically it's organized by like, I can see what month I recorded it and be like, oh yeah, I think I had an idea back in October, like, like, but no, I do actually spend a lot of time just sitting and like hitting play on, one after another until I find something. But yeah. I have thought about that there must be a better way, but
there's the stories I hear by emotion, by theme, by, like I said, someone just told me if they give it a title, they know it's worth saving.
Yeah. Well, that's true sometimes.
So, so you have 3 kids. I have 4. There's a lot of kids between us. And I found that having kids has made me more disciplined writer, because before kids, you got all day to do stuff. And now I know that if I have that hour free, I'm not going to sit around on the couch and just kind of stare into the air. So do you find that having kids has made you more disciplined as a writer?
Yes, 100%. I feel like I was touching on that earlier. It's like,
Yeah.
I ever since I have had to set the time to work, yeah, I feel like I'm not going to waste this time. I need to do something. I need to get something done. Um, and I think in the past, as when I was younger, I might look at that as like, you tell yourself you can't like force the creative process or something, but you totally can. Like,
Yeah.
you can't. I mean, it's like, even because you don't have to keep everything that you work on. It's at least like just get something out. I think I hear that from writers as well. Like, um, just write, like, of people, the advice that I've heard, like for people writing a book or something, it's like, just sit down, just force yourself to write something for 3 hours or whatever a day, and then look at it later. But yeah, so no, I've actually found that I've become way more prolific in the last few years because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I've never thought of that till you mentioned it, but a lot of songwriters will tell me don't force it, wait for the muse, but there's not a novelist in the world that would say that. Like, no novelist is going to say, yeah, every novelist says butt in the seat, whether it's write 500 words or 2 hours. Like, no novelist has ever said, yeah, just wait till the muse strikes. Don't worry about it. But that's funny. I've never thought about that, but that's weird how those two disciplines are so different in how they approach it.
I mean, I think even for me, like the music part, the music part and the lyrics part are kind of separate, or it's like I always pretty much always write music first. And so even with lyrics, I used to end up with like 15 unfinished songs, and with that, and then I'd have to sit down and write lyrics for all of them. And I've stopped doing that. Like, I've started just like forcing myself to, like, I can't move on to the next song until I've like finished the one I'm working on. And I end up with like, I think I've kind of loosened my um whatever my the I used to, I think, be more precious about the lyrics that I wrote, and kind of like just labor over it more. And recently I've kind of been more into like stream of consciousness, just again, just to get something out, just have something to sing, and maybe you'll come back to it later. And a lot of times I'll be like, these are just placeholders, and sometimes they are, and sometimes it's just pretty silly bad stuff, but usually, like, I don't know, it's like I still like won't, I don't want to just sing like ham and eggs or something. Like, I don't, it's like it has to have like, it has to be like something. There has to be something there. And basically what I found is just that, like, it's not as hard as I made it out to be to myself in the past. Like, it's like, it's almost better to be more free with it, and you end up with sometimes more interesting results. I think that's what I found recently. I don't know. Recently my songwriting has become way looser, and like I don't know if it's because of I feel like the pandemic, like, kind of reprogrammed how I approach music, because I was so, like, I felt very like thrown for a loop by all, like the fact that I can't tour anymore, or I couldn't tour for a long time. And like, I'm like, it just kind of lined up where my wife started working full time, right around then. So like, I mean, in many ways that was really fortunate. Financially, we're like, okay, there's like we were able to bridge it.
Yeah.
But like, it's just like my life, everybody's life changed dramatically. And so for a while you're like, it's just feeling of kind of your sense of identity is sort of called into question or something. Because I'm looking at music as possibly not the way I can, my career anymore, or whatever, so to speak. But I started just write, I just wrote, like, I was like, I'm gonna make a solo record, and I just, had fun just writing any type of song I wanted. Like, I just was like, I didn't, my, like, going into this record again that just came out, like, the whole idea was just to have fun and not think too hard about any particular thing, and just kind of allow the ideas to flow. And that really, like, I feel like this record was like my first, like my first kind of dip into that idea, that kind of like those waters of just like feeling free and not trying to write in any specific way. Whereas, like, I think in the past, I would labor over things a lot more. I would take way longer to finish songs, and like for no reason. I feel like because in the end, like, the quality is there. Like, it's like you have to have more faith in your own abilities and not really. Anyway, this record I made, I feel like I love it because it's to my ears, it feels kind of loose and messy and weird. But I think this batch of songs I just wrote, or I've been writing, like, it's like it's almost more focused in its looseness. Like, I'm like, I know what I'm doing now in terms of, like, I'm writing, like, I kind of set this goal for myself to write like a quote unquote like pop album. I want like 3.5 minute songs, whatever, like verse, chorus, maybe a bridge, maybe not, like, but just have kind of traditional song structures and nothing too loose or sprawling, and just like have, and have the songs feel, open and welcoming and engaging. But anyway, I don't know. I'm really excited about this batch of songs I've been writing, and it just feels, it feels like, to me, like they weren't labored over. They feel loose and good in a way that, like, because then you can labor over it later when you're in the studio. That's when you can take the time to make sure that they're well crafted in terms of, the arrangements, and it's like, and even arrangements in terms of the instrumentation, but also the actual structure of the songs. Like, you can always, everything's pliable, up to a certain point. But
so did you, with this sense of looseness and more fun, did you find yourself revising your lyrics less on this album than in the previous? Like, maybe, because I see, it's funny because I hear with that answer, I hear you're actually kind of formulating a ritual. Like, I hear you saying, this is the way I did it with the solo album. This is the way I want to do it for the next Real Estate album. So I guess that's another thing altogether. But yeah, I guess my original question was, did you revise less intentionally on this one as far as the lyrics?
Well, I mean, not intentional, maybe. I mean, it's like, again, I wrote the lyrics sort of quickly, and just wrote about, what felt good, or, like whatever ideas popped into my head. And I mean, there were a few things that I had to come back and change, but I would say, yeah, it was mostly like, first thought, best thought kind of. And like, yeah, I mean, that was like, even that translates even to like stuff like guitar solos and things where I was recording these demos in my house and just improvising, solos, just playing, improvising. And then when it came time to actually record the song in the studio, literally just replaying the thing that I like, it's no longer improvised. I am now just re-recording the thing that I improvised originally. So it's like, I guess it is still improvised, but it's
right.
It's a recreation of that. But original idea. But yeah, just like trying to stay really true to the first idea that you have.
Yeah. So I have a quote for you I'm going to read from Agatha Christie, the novelist. And she said, the best time to plan a book is when you're doing the dishes. And I think over the past couple of years of people being homebound, I'm always amazed by how many songwriters have told me that they have gotten song ideas vacuuming, folding clothes, chopping vegetables, doing the mundane activities that don't work, gardening, that don't require any thought. So I'm curious, how often do those song ideas come to you in those times when you're doing anything but creating, some of those mundane activities?
I mean, a lot in the shower, a lot.
Yeah,
Or
I hear that.
like that's like actually for some reason that's I'll come out of the shower and like have figured out some puzzle piece that I needed to figure out, sometimes with lyrics, but sometimes with, a guitar part that wasn't working or things like that. Yeah. Driving, I write probably most of my lyrics when I'm driving, like I'll have like a instrumental demo to listen to, and I'll listen to it maybe once or twice and then just sit in silence and try and come up with the song in my head. Yeah, so I would say a good maybe 50% of the process of writing a song happens like, outside of this room.
Are you a linear songwriter though all the time? I mean, or like I interviewed, Daniel Lanois, the producer, and this is like 6 months ago. He told me that he does all of his lyrics on 11 by 22 art paper, and there's thought bubbles and lines and words all over the place, like not linear in the least.
Wow.
And so that got me thinking a lot about, do you always start writing? Because like when I start writing, and I'm not a songwriter, I'm writing different kinds of things, but I start writing wherever the hell I have the most to say. That's rarely the beginning, because I find that once I start to write, I just need that momentum.
Yeah.
But the only time I ever write at the beginning is if when that art thing is already in my mind. So I guess my question to you is, are you a linear songwriter or not?
Most of the time I am. Yeah, most of the time I'll start with the first verse. Yeah, literally, like I'll get to the chorus and I'll be like, it needs it, because then you have an idea of what the chorus. Very rarely I'll write the chorus first, and then but and that's really that comes to like the idea of like if you're going into a song knowing what the song's going to be about before you start writing it. So I feel like if you're writing the chorus first, it's because you're like, I'm going to write a song about this or that. And like, so this is going to be the big message of the song or whatever, if it has a message. But for me, it tends to be more abstract until, like I kind of find my way through it, which may or may not be, I guess there's no wrong way of doing it, but I don't know, sometimes I wish that I was able to be, I admire that in songwriters who like you can, where each song is just like obviously about some specific thing. But no, for me, it's like, yeah, it's often starts with just an image or, some sort of painting a picture of whatever the thing may be. And then you get, you kind of work your way through it. And then you sort of eventually have an idea of what the thing, what the song is about. Yeah, I don't know. It can be a painstaking process, which is why, like I was saying earlier, I'm trying to kind of more just plow through it and then step back and be like, okay, what was that? Like, what was that about? And then you can chip away at it, go back and, if something that you wrote doesn't fit with the overall theme, you can kind of delete that and add something else in there. But
yeah. So I've got all these quotes written down by writers, and what you're saying, there's one thing that Allen Ginsberg said, the poet. He said, to gain your own voice, you have to forget about having it heard. And in other words, like not being self-conscious at all. And I hear that's a little bit what you're saying, is kind of plowing through without being self-conscious at all about it, right?
Definitely. Yeah, that's hard. That's kind of a stumbling block for me, is if you start thinking about the people in your life that are going to, it's not even strangers. It's more like, the people that that are going to hear your lyrics and read into it, whatever they're going to read into it. And so it's like, you have to kind of shut that part of your brain down for sure. In order for it to be interesting at all.
Yeah.
Not like super guarded.
Right. And then there's another quote, which is exactly so funny. You're saying these same thing. Oh, I have this written down. So E.L. Doctorow, the writer, said, writing is like driving at night. You can only see as far as the headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. And
yeah.
right. So his whole thing is right. He never has an idea of where it's going to end up, but eventually he gets there. So
yeah, I mean, it's funny because sometimes I'll finish a song and I'll know it's done, and I'll be like, this works as a whole. But it'll be like sometimes I mean, especially this used to happen more where like, I'd be on the road for, I'd be playing the song for the 50th time or whatever. And then all of a sudden, as I'm singing it, I'm like, oh, like some new meaning will, come out of it, or like, or I'll be like, oh, I guess that's what this song is about. Like it's like a subconscious thing that all of a sudden becomes apparent. Like, oh, that's what I was writing about.
All right, two more questions. One, Hemingway said he can never write about Paris when he was in Paris. He always needed distance to be able to write about something. So whether it's a place or an event or anything like that, do you find that distance is best, or you need to be in the immediacy of something to be able to write about it effectively?
It's definitely easier to have some distance from it for sure. Which is again, but it becomes, I mean, that's why I end up, writing about, things from my past so often, is because it's just easier to do that. It's harder to kind of analyze your current situation, which is what I've been trying to do more. And I've been having fun, like, or fun, I don't know, fun, but I've been having fulfilling results, I would say, just trying to do a thing where you get into mundane details of your life and sort of just write about kind of sensory things or things that you're seeing or feeling. And because I like that in other people's songwriting, I like hearing details. Just small details of everyday life are things that I've been trying to kind of work into my songs. And I don't know. Yeah, it's hard for anybody to kind of step back and analyze what's happening in their life as it's happening. But it can be, therapeutic, I think, to do that in whatever form of creativity. Like that's what a lot of creativity, I guess, is. It's like whatever, trying to analyze your own situation.
Yeah. All right. So last question. So the all authoritative Martin Courtney Wikipedia page said, and I quote, "You studied mostly literature in college." It's in quotes. This is mostly literature. So I've found that songwriters, for the most part, are pretty, voracious readers. So how much reading do you get to do? And if that ever influences your songwriting process, who are your favorite writers, stuff like that?
Well, I haven't been able to read very much in the last few years with kids. And so I mean, recently I've been trying to spend more time reading. I've been getting into like Ursula Le Guin. Like I was like, I want to read like, sci-fi or fantasy, things like that are just, I mean, there's a lot there to chew on. But it's fun to read those types of stories. I went through a phase where I was really into Murakami. It is kind of lyrical, like his writing. It does feel kind of musical, and abstract and stuff, which I like. But yeah, I don't know. I need to. I actually have felt that if I had more time which is why I'm trying to set the time aside to read more, is because I feel like, yeah, it will. It's just good to have as many ideas as you can in your head, from other people, as well as but just in terms of language. And I think it would be helpful to kind of get some fresh fodder in the brain for writing.
I mean, it's very obvious to me the songwriters who have the best lyrics typically, are the ones that read the most because
Yeah.
of what you said. I mean, they're seeing phrases, language, words, sounds that, and whether they're making their way into their lyrics or not, it's still,
You know what's
they're,
funny is, sorry, but I just like this is kind of maybe embarrassing, but like the most reading I've done in the last few years has been like kids books, you know?
I know you're going to say that. Yeah.
And even that though, like cause I read these weird, like, especially books from the mid 20th century, like 50s, like the way, I don't know, or 60s even, like, but like some of these, the language that they use, like, I don't know if it's like, if they were intentionally writing in a way that like someone was studying like child psychology and was like, oh, you have to like, but some of the turns of phrase that are used in these books are so weird that like I have ended up stealing things from kids' books and putting them, you know, like, it's cool though. It's like I there's a bunch of that on the second to last real estate record. There's like the sky was wild is like from, you know, sky was wild with sunshine or something, was like, I don't think that's the line that I used, but just that phrase, the sky was wild, I thought was cool. And like, Laughing Brook, like there's thing, I don't know, I did steal a few things from kids books. But yeah, again, cause it's, I mean, I guess cause it's fresh in my head, but also like, yeah, you find it's about like finding, I've always been pretty good at like, if or good at, or just a part of my personality is like, if I hear someone say some, you know, say a phrase that I think sounds cool, or like, you know, use some kind of language that I find interesting, like I'll end up incorporating it into my own vernacular. And it's just, I like, I don't forget those things. So that ends up happening in the song, in the lyrics as well.
Two comments. One is I interviewed Britt Daniel from Spoon a couple months ago, and he told me, he actually confessed that he will sit in a bar by himself with a laptop and listen to people's conversations. We hear something good, he'll write down, you know, he'll, you know, so I can imagine Britt Daniel in the corner of a bar,
Yeah,
you know, with his laptop.
Cooler. That's
Yeah.
like what that's what I was, that's how I heard like Elliott Smith would write his.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I mean, listen, between two of us, we probably read 8 million children's books, and writing a good children's book, I have enormous, and I'm not talking about just the cheesy, you know what that's like. I mean, where the lines are just cliched, but I can, my gosh, I could think of like great children's books like Strega Nona. Was a great.
That's my favorite. What's his name? Tommy or Tommy something.
Yes. Yeah, that's the one about the Strega Nona is the pasta one, right? I think. Yeah. I mean, that's a great book. I can't believe this is the first conversation I had with a songwriter about our favorite children's books. So this is great. Yeah. Lily's Purple Plastic Purse.
I don't know that one.
But Strega Nona, but I read that, or Gucci Gucci. Now that might be a translation. But you read those and you appreciate, wow, that's an art form. Like, not just writing the cliched books that, you know, shit, you and I could probably write like a children's book, but where there's really something, you know, the language is good because they're recognizing that adults are reading these, and it's very difficult.
No, I agree. Yeah, you can tell. Well, there's one, it becomes like a visceral thing where you're like, I just can't read that book again.
Right.
I'll be like, go get we're gonna read, like, you know, go pick a story and, like, you know, I'll read it to you, and then I'm just like, go get something else. Like, I can't do that one. You know, like,
they're like, you are my. I mean, because I'm envisioning, when you say that, I'm envisioning sitting with our kids and having that literal exact same thing come out of my, like, I can't do this. We can't read this book. Go get any other book off the bookshelf. I can't read this book anymore. I'm
trying to remember this one. What's his name? The book is called Frederick's Fables. Oh God, what's his name? Oh, Leo Leone. You ever read any of his stuff?
No.
It's really cool, and the illustrations are really great too, but the stories themselves are like really weird and surreal. there's like almost a creepiness to the stories, but it's not. It's like yeah, it's just like the way he incorporates magic into his stories is really interesting to me, actually. Like it's, yeah, they're really good.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. Don't forget, you can find all of my interviews with over 200 songwriters on my Songwriters on Process website at songwritersonprocess.com, going all the way back to 2010. You can read them, watch them, or listen to them. So until next time, thanks for listening.